Wanted to start with you first. Throughout the series, Dana appears to be this open book who's so outspoken about her anxieties. And I think she uses her humor as a defense mechanism for the pain that she's harboring inside. And you've done such a brilliant job bringing the nuances of this character to life. How have you found your way into her? And how have you created that space for yourself, particularly in episode 6, where we see her open up about her past? It's such an emotional arc and episode for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot. I think for me, I mean, I had to do a lot of research because I'm a person that's lucky enough to have never experienced a panic attack. And there are a lot of people in my life who I am very close to who have. So, I had like a deep wealth of very intimate knowledge, getting to hear from them. And what's interesting too is I'm a podcast person, so I listen to a lot of podcasts about anxiety disorders and panic disorders and people who experience panic attacks and like the differences and the intersections of all of those things. But what is also very interesting is that panic attacks look different for everyone.
Mm.
There are a couple of like universal pieces that I was like, I'm hoping, I think this will reach further, but everyone has they can look different for different types of people. So for me, it involved, talking to my girlfriend, experiences panic attacks. So I got to really, she talked me through so much of like the physical feelings and then like what is going through your mind at that time and like how you can learn to cope with them. Because for Dana, she's had them the for her entire adult life. She's dealt with them, so she's pretty well versed in like what to do, but she depends mostly on medication. And what you see in episode 6 is that like on that one day, probably the worst panic attack she maybe has even had since the first one. Um, she somehow came unprepared that day, and then you kind of have to watch her muscle through, and that's like a little bit more raw and a little bit scarier for her. So yeah, I think for me, and I was very anxious about it. And Ashley has been kind of this. I'm very new to TV and film, and I have a background in musical theater. This was a lot of firsts for me, and Ashley became kind of this, whether she likes it or not, kind of a mentor to me. And we became very close in the show. And I was very anxious about my portrayal of this aspect of the character because I didn't want it to be vague, and I didn't want it to be surface level. I didn't want it to be um forced. And I talked to Ashley about that, and she said, listen, like, and correct me if I'm off course here,
I
but
don't remember what.
I don't remember. She, in these moments where there's something very emotionally demanding, or like there's a really high stakes experience, or your character has to fight through something, it's not about you. And it's not about you or acting. And it's not about whether or not you think you're doing a good job. It's about doing your best so that the people who are watching it can feel as though they are being reached towards and seen.
Mm.
So that became the priority, and it really helped for me to reshape my point of view going in, and like putting a lot of pressure on myself. Instead, it was just like, well, how can I try to do the best for the people that need to see this on TV?
You accomplished that. And then Ashley, you have such a gift for making audiences connect with the characters that you play. And I think the way that Erica strives for perfection is something that I think so many people can relate to, particularly people from marginalized communities who aren't afforded as many opportunities. I know as an artist, you're always looking to play characters that mean something to you. What was it about Erica that resonated and hit home for you? And how did that connection allow you to tap into her emotional core?
I think the thing that I really like about Erica is that she is super intelligent. Like the thing that drew me initially was that this was like a Harvard graduate who graduated at the top of her class. So she's very smart. She's someone who will always try really, really hard. And I think that's really interesting to get to play someone who's like hyper intelligent, especially as like a Black woman. You know what I mean? Like we have these archetypes that sometimes people try to force you into. And I was like, oh, this is something that I would love to play. In terms of the need for perfection, I think that's also something that like marginalized communities, people of color experience a lot, because I think that we typically tend to feel a need to prove ourselves more because we will not have the same opportunities, unfortunately, sometimes that that Caucasian people will have just automatically. Like there's this need, I feel it in particular, like this need to be 10 times better than someone who is Caucasian because they might get it just because of something that is outside of my control.
Mhm.
I think that Erica feels that so strongly, so much more strongly than I do, that like if she ever slips up and is not perfect, everything that she has worked for will just like crumble. So I think that's been really fun to sort of play that need for like control and the need to be the best so that no one will ever try to like take what she has earned, I guess.
I think your two characters will make audiences feel so seen. And then Ari, you already touched upon this, but you have a theater background where you know your character's story from start to end. But television is a medium where you're learning more with each episode. How much of an adjustment has it been going from the stage to the screen? And what if you learn about your own craft?
Oh my God. I learned everything that I know now. Like in that period of time, I learned everything that I now have, that I didn't learn just from like being a human being in the world as an adult, you know. Um, and adulthood, I suppose, is subjective. But yeah, I mean, it was a massive adjustment, but TV, being on a TV show has kind of always been my dream. I grew up watching television, and when I was a kid, I didn't really fit in. I got bullied. And I wasn't really like anybody else in my, community. I grew up in a kind of small suburb just outside of Philadelphia, and it was mostly white and, not queer, nobody openly queer, maybe one or two openly queer people in my high school. And I was just different and I was weird and I was really obnoxious, more so than I am now. And I think like I always wanted TV was kind of a solace for me. I was like a diehard Grey's Anatomy fan because I would go home and I would like put on these characters and I'd be like, okay, what are they going to get into now? And like I was so attached and I think, as somebody with undiagnosed ADD, like I lock on really hard to things and I was really obsessive as a kid. So I was fascinated by this idea that like the story never ends. And I love theater because I love to take time and ruminate and build the world with people. And I did miss it after shooting our first season. But what I've always wanted is to always be looking and to grow alongside of a character. So
Mhm.
that's exciting. And I think you just get to achieve a little bit more depth, more nuance, more detail. You get more time with the story. And it was a big adjustment, but again, like I learned so much from my colleagues. And I will say, like, to the last point to your question to Ashley, like she is just like Erica in that, like, she is one
Oh,
of the most hardworking people I have ever. This woman, like, so much, she's got pages and pages of notes and thoughts and questions about her character. Like, if you give her the smallest detail about what's happened to her, she will find ways to fold it in to her character in a way that, like, maybe she only knows, but that is what draws you into her performance because there's so much life underneath what is on the page. And so I've gotten to learn
Mhm.
from her. And I mean, everybody on set, everybody has a different method. And you have to come prepared to play in a way that is different than in theater. But yeah, it's been a remarkable journey.
And one that we hope will get more seasons. And then Ashley, Erica tells Oliver at the start of the show that she's the real quarterback of the team. And I think that really is true. And she has such a deep empathy for everybody that she's treating. Who is the patient that will have the biggest impact on her journey this season and why?
I think it's this patient named June who we see in episode 8 because June has a disorder that she's an elderly patient and her disorder sort of really resonates with Erica, and Erica opens up to her in a way that we haven't seen her do with patients. Usually she's sort of, professional mode with them, trying to fix them. And June sort of gets her to open up about her personal life in a way that we have not seen her do. And I think Erica just also feels more comfortable with older people. So like she's able to do that. And June inspires her to live her life a little bit, and to figure out a work-life balance. But the
Yeah.
life part is the part that she hasn't really done. So June inspires her to get a life, essentially.
Oh, that's such a great episode for your character. And also episode 7 is such a tearjerker. I got one final question for the two of you. I asked the guys this earlier, but Oliver is known for his unconventional methods. What's the most unusual or unexpected thing that you've done to prepare for a role?
Oh, what a good question. I don't know. All right.
I mean, I was thinking like Ashley's had a lot more roles than I have.
Okay, you've done theater. Don't start. You got.
Theater. Huh. Wow, this is really hard.
I guess I would say, and this is such a dumb answer, but I don't I gotta feel the silence. I had a role that was
I
a
appreciate you
role
for
that
that.
was very physically demanding. It was a very acrobatic role, and I'd never done something like that. So I think the most extreme thing I did was like start working out and like training so hard and like every day was like in the gym and then like doing these things and like was eating properly. It was probably the healthiest I've ever been in my life, but I was like, because I have a sweet tooth like you would. I mean, it's Ari knows it's out of control. So I think
I've never seen like I'm gonna divert from the question because I don't even think I've done anything outrageous, which is sad because I hope that I'm an eclectic person. But actually, like when I first met her when we were shooting the pilot, she was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm not eating sugar right now because like I have a really crazy sweet tooth, and like when I start, I can't stop." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like LA girl is like perfect and pretty and skinny is not gonna eat sugar." And then I saw her invite sugar back into her life like several weeks later, and this girl can eat like she can face like 4 desserts.
in a sitting, like in a day,
It's
it's
dessert before dinner if you go out to
try it. If you've not tried it, I recommend it because it will make everything so much better because you've already gotten the thing that you wanted out of the way, and then you
and
can.
she also does
Mm.
it so that other people won't want to bite and share. She doesn't have
I
to.
never said that. You came to that conclusion. I've never said that that's a thing. So
Okay, maybe you just blacked out when you were saying it.